Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1996's Killer Barbies from Mr. Jess Franco, Jesus Franco. This is a 1996 film that he did with a Spanish punk band named the Killer Barbies, and they spelled their name I-E-S, whereas the title of this is Y-S, very interesting. And he actually did another film with them as well that I will look at in the future on this YouTube page. But this is his 1996 foray with this pop punk band from Spain, female fronted, and they are the main kind of characters in this film called Killer Barbies. It says in the front here, sometimes it's all madness, right there. Indeed. And here's the back. We got some great kind of shots. Sorry about all the glare here, but we got some great shots. You see some interesting little people there. Okay, and this was put out by Shriek Show, and this was put out by them some years back. And I believe this is really the only way to get it, at least in a North American release. Now, this particular release has some pretty crazy dubbing, unfortunately, but at least it's easy to understand, and you can understand all the dialogue, but it is some pretty, bad dubbing in here, and it's loud and things like that, but you can at least still hear the music and the sound design and definitely understand the story and get into the movie, which is great, because sometimes in some of Franco's 90s output and beyond, sometimes he had Spanish actors and actresses speaking English, and it was very difficult to understand some of the things they were saying, and the volume was low. But in this case, you are going to hear it, but it is dubbed. Okay, so it's dubbed pretty bad, but you are going to hear it. This is Killer Barbies, and we're going to get into this film right here, 1996, Jess Franco. Now you think about it, Jess Franco was older at this point in the game, and you think of a lot of directors that maybe started off really fresh and wild and crazy and against the grain, outsider cinema, and you think about them, and as they get older they mellow with age, they start thinking about their mortality, they get more religious, or they tame down, they get more sophisticated, they forget about their past, they have regrets, blah 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 blah. Never so, and not so with Mr. Jess Franco. Jess Franco's movies actually got crazier and less mainstream. I think that was a key focus there. His films got even more independent, more free, and less mainstream, and Killer Barbies 96 is another representation of that. Essentially what we have here in Killer Barbies is we have Jess Franco really inside a horror film. Jess Franco making a horror film. A trashy, sleazy, low-budget, weird, wild, bizarre world of Jess Franco in horror. We have this pop punk band, the Killer Barbies, just got done a gig. They take their minivan slash bus, and they eventually get stranded near a mysterious mansion with dark secrets involving semen and blood and a countess. And they get wrapped up in this. And this particular film, stylistically, is very interesting as it plays with different styles incorporating and within the horror genre. Let's get into Killer Barbies 1996 by Mr. Jess Franco. First and foremost, we're going to look at the music, and of course, what an interesting film, because we have a real pop punk band from Spain, and we are incorporating some of their music in this film. I mean, this film has a lot of their music in it, so you're getting this awesome pop punk music, female fronted vocals, really has a great 90s vibe to the pop punk music, if you catch my drift, and it brings this party vibe to the film, this fun vibe to the film. It also it kind of has music video vibes, as well as you get kind of live performances by the band as Franco is filming them and doing like a piece of music video per se, Franco's vision in that. And it's really great stuff because you kind of get this pop punk horror gothic movie, but we're going to get into that a little bit more later. We also, with their awesome pop pop punk music. Definitely incorporating one of their songs, I believe it's called Love Killer, which gets repeated throughout the film. Their music is actually not easy to come by. Certain CDs are really expensive, and other ones are cheaper. You can get them on Amazon and eBay and things like that. We also have some pretty dark cues in this film, horrific dark soundscapes and things like that. Sometimes, so interestingly, they will, all of a sudden just kind of happen and bring that ambiance, bring that other side to the pop punk, and now bringing in this horror world as well. Um, Stylistically, this is such an interesting film because you have punk, you have slasher, you have kind of grindhouse exploitation, you have sleaze, and you have sophisticated, elegant gothic horror, which is so interesting and so weird all at the same time. Um, and Franco has these, of course, location wise. How does Franco get these locations? I've said it a million times before. Franco should have been teaching the modern indie filmmakers how to make their films actually look good. This film really seems low budget, and I believe it was very low budget, and he is doing so many great things in here for such a low budget film with the dubbing, the bad dubbing and everything. It's juicy. It's filled with great stuff. We have this. I've never seen so much fog before, hands down. It is so foggy. There are sections of this film that reminded me of going into haunted house attractions during the Halloween season. Wondrous fog inside and the interiors and in the exteriors. We have this great scene of this guy in a small boat with a lantern in the front of the boat and fog rolling over the water and him kind of cascading over the, in the small boat towards you. Very gothic, very, very mysterious, very, atmospheric. We have this crazy big house slash mansion with corridors and crazy stairwells and rooms, and he's just using it to full effect. We have this blue lighting that all of a sudden happens. Sometimes he puts these crazy kind of this one scene where he has kind of Vaseline around the camera, except for the center. He's doing a lot of very bizarre motifs with dolls and chess pieces in this really crazy kind of large chess room, and skeletons and mutilated bodies and blood dripping. This crazy abandoned structure outside. There's this like abandoned structure outside, this body of water with the boat, and then this mansion, and of course inside the pop punk bands, the dive bar, the dive place where they play at, and also their minivan. We have all these different locations, and when you look inside of the mansion, you have the stairs leading up, but you also have bizarre sculptures and dolls and figurines with very realistic eyes. I believe almost a real animal carcass somewhere in here as well. Maybe a goat head with a real eyeball there. Almost reminded me a bit of the Eraserhead baby in David Lynch's film. And the interesting motif of time and these little clocks and clocks everywhere, always at midnight. Very interesting things here. Stylistically, we also have Franco's just zany, outrageous dialogue, and it's such a juxtaposition of styles in here. We have so many different things going on here because we have kind of this zany, wild, crazy, funny Franco, low budget trash sleaze, elegant gothic horror. There's so many things going on here. There was a great location in the abandoned structures outside where there's just like a slaughterhouse, bodies hanging. This is definitely one of the goriest films I've ever seen Franco do because he doesn't typically do gore. His blood is very minimal. It's not realistic. It's not one of his focuses, and and at the same time, it's something that I find beautiful in his films. It's so interesting. In this particular film, there's a lot of there's gore effects, and lots of blood and lots of kind of gory decadence and gory trashy vibes, grindhousey type vibes. In this film, we really have kind of elegant gothic horror of the past, as well as kind of the exploitation horror of the 70s and the 80s in Jess Franco's weird, bizarre dream world. The dialogue in this film is, like, as I said, outrageous and funny at the same time. You know, the band members with each other, it kind of almost seems like a slasher film. And we have this really playing a lot on the horror front as well, where we have also sexuality, and we have a wondrous actress who's older in this film. Her name is Maringella Giordano, who was in Burial Ground from the 70s, 70s or 80s, I believe. Burial Ground, I think it's the 70s, late 70s. She looks fantastic, and she's nude in this film. We have the lead singer of the Killer Barbies in her panties, and I think in one scene topless, or driving topless or naked. You know, women in high boots. Talks about, you know, biting your ass, you know, things like that. Lots of humping in the tour bus. Kind of a butt grinding on the guy, you know, simulated sex in this film. But one of the centerpieces is this violent sexual scene involving blood and S&M and a girl riding a guy, and death and sensuality and power and reincarnation and healing, all of these things together, and secrets and mysteries. There's decapitations. There's this kind of slaughtered kitchen scene with fog that reminded me of a haunted house attraction as well. There's so many kind of crazy things in here, and crazy dialogues and crazy characters, kind of like an Igor character who likes to cut off ears and drains blood, and two midgets who like to eat the ears, and there's like they play drums at one point, and you hear the drums being played. It's such a crazy movie, and it has a late night feel. It has an 80s slasher feel. It also has a 70s grindhouse feel, and it's very, very low budget at the same time. And we even break the fourth wall at the end of the film, and we have this fun vibe, I would say, throughout it, but also kind of calling back Jess Franco's 70s disturbing Marquis de Sade vibes also. But when you bring this pop punk band in, the Killer Barbies, you're bringing in this fun 90s vibe that could almost remind you at times of Alicia Silverstone, you know, the Clueless film, you know, from the 90s. You almost get that vibe also. It's so many great things in here. And it's really unlike any other Franco film I've seen so far. But definitely his 90s output is so batshit crazy and wonderful because it's so not mainstream. This is 1996's Jess Franco's Killer Barbies. Here it is, folks. Sometimes it's all madness. This is it, folks. Put out by Shriek Show on DVD. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like 1996's Killer Barbies. Thank you so much, and good night.